I want to go back quite a ways. I actually want to go back before 1953.
Okay.
I want to find out whether or not you were in any way involved with a farm.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Well, my family moved from a suburb area to a farm when I was 10 years old, over in Dover, Delaware. And it was a working farm, a dairy farm. We had a typical dairy farm of those days, milked them all by hand, and we farmed with 9 horses. And so I learned my job, of course, get up in the morning, first thing, and get the cows in, and then everybody else would come and start milking, and I would go over and get the horses all in, feed them, turn them all out to drink, and get them back in, feed them, get them for the day, and come back and help finish the milking. Get off to school by 8 o'clock, and hopefully, if I didn't miss the bus, I had to hitchhike to school. So, and then on the summers and Saturdays and weekends, of course, we worked on the farm. And like I was saying before, I've all this antique farm equipment around here is just second nature to me, so I guess I'm antique along with it. And I started working as 10 years old. I'd be out there riding the mowing machine and breaking the hay across and loading the hay, and thrashing time I'd be working with all the thrashing people. I was always with the horse and wagon. But all this equipment it really brings back memories. And
so help me understand how you got from Delaware to Howard County.
Well, that's very interesting too. I was very fortunate all along. I went in the service, got in the Air Corps, which I liked. I wanted to get in and got accepted, went in, was an air cadet, and then I served in Europe. The war just got over, just before we were sent over. And when we were going over, we were seeing all the signs, welcome home to everybody else. We're going the other way. I went over in a Liberty ship and came back in a Victory ship, and they were something else to ride in, I'll tell you. So anyway, went to the University of Delaware. I was very fortunate. Of course, I was a good student because I was interested in what I was doing. And I was accepted at Cornell, and I was accepted at Penn as well, but I really wanted more country work. So I figured University of Pennsylvania was right in Philadelphia at the time. They didn't have all they have now. So I went to Cornell, and when I graduated from Cornell, one of my fraternity brothers asked me if what I was going to do when I graduated, and I said, well, I want to try to find a job so I can really use what I've just learned and use it and get experience. And he said, well, why don't you come down and talk to my dad? So he took me home with him for the weekend, and I went out on calls with him and all, and checked his hospital, and so I got that job. It turned out to be an excellent year's experience for me. He was an excellent veterinarian. He had a good country work and a good small animal practice, a very nice hospital they just built. So anyway, while I had originally wanted to be really just a large animal veterinarian, and I did like all animals, so I've always taken care of dogs and cats anyway, and always had a dog and cat. So he really taught me to enjoy doing small animal work. So when we came down here, we just started out doing all creatures great and small. What brought me down here, again, my guardian angel was always looking out for me. The veterinary pharmaceutical men traveled around selling their drugs and detailing us on drugs, telling us what the new ones were. So a couple of them said, where are you going when you leave here? So I told them, I said, well, I was going to go home, but now they're selling all the farms for potato farms, and that's going to take away a lot of my country work, so I'm going to just look around. He said, well, gee, why don't you try Maryland? He said, in Howard County and Montgomery County, They really need veterinarians down there. So I said, well, I'll go look. So my wife and I came down here. I got married when I was a sophomore, incidentally, which was a blessing. My wife, it turned out to be. Everybody said, well, that'll be the end of the studying. But it's really much easier to study like that, to tell you the truth. So we came down, and fortunately we had some school friends who had taken a job down here in Catonsville, so we stayed with them. Came over here and stopped to see Buddy Myers, who was a county agent. And he said, well, he said, you know, we really do need a veterinarian badly. He says, there's no veterinarian in the county. Dr. Ziegler's in Catonsville, and Dr. Latson's in Olney. They do come in. And there's a doctor in Sykesville, an older doctor in Sykesville, very nice man. And that was all. So I thought, well, I traveled all around. I thought, Howard County was beautiful, and it is still, although it's not got all those farms like used to, one farm right after another. And I said, this looks good. So another good thing was they were good friends with a real estate agent right here in Ellicott City, the people that we stayed with. So they introduced us to them, and they said, well, look, I'll find you a place to stay, and you can stay with me until I find you a place. So not only was that, I was able to. She let me use her basement as an office and helped me answer the phone, set up an office, and we just set right up and started. And so we started working out of her place, Mrs. Springer, Thelma Springer. Then she found us a farmhouse at the Double H Ranch. And Judge Vanderbilt, it was his farm right on what is now 29. Right where the Post Pavilion is. At the top of the hill, the house is still there. The house is still there. They're using it for an office building. So she rented us that place. And so
what was it used for?
Pardon?
What was that property used for?
Oh, it was a big, at that time, J.C. Lewis and his son Henry Witt had bought it, and they had Hereford cattle. Beautiful, big herd of Hereford cattle, and they owned that side of the road and the other side of the road, and they owned J.C. Lewis's place. It was up right at the corner of Meadow Ridge Road and 29. All that land there, it was J.C. Lewis's. And Henry Witt, they were developers. They developed Silver Springs, then they moved out here.
So when you moved into that house, it was a functioning farm all around?
It was a working cattle farm. And I was very fortunate that he needed a vet too, so I got to do all his work, which was wonderful. He had lots and lots of cattle. And it was really a blessing. So we were there for about 8 or 10 years.
Right,
and
we're going to concentrate on that area.
Okay.
That time in that area. Did that farm have a name?
Pardon?
Did that farm have a name?
Well, it was Judge Vander, I think his farm to start with, and then J.C. Lewis, he called it the Double H Ranch.
Oh.
Yeah, it was Henry and something else, and it became the Double H Ranch, both sides of the road. So, and then he had ponies too up there at his own farm, and so I got to doctor them.
So
and it was.
So at those early days, you got to walk to work.
I was there, got up in the morning, and I was at work. Yeah, it was wonderful.
What was that like?
It was wonderful. The only thing is, people would come see you to get medicine or ask you about their dogs at all hours of the night and day. That was the only thing, but it's amazing.
So there were barns and fields.
Yep.
And you would. So there was a sick cow.
Yep.
Now, explain to me in those days how you worked through that situation. Here's a sick cow. It's out.
Yeah.
Here, Doc. We need your help.
Yeah, yeah, and so in his case, yeah, a lot of them would be in the field, and in fact, around the farms, occasionally it'd be in the field because we had the dairy barns, And if it was a routine illness, I mean, something that they would always have it in the barn for me. But if it was something down sick, then I have to go out in the field. My first call here was to a farm like Alfred Bassler, not Alfred, it was Ben, no, it wasn't Ben either. Another brother, Bassler. The Basslers were all along Cedar Lane, one right after another. And so we went over there, and that was my first call, and that was a cow down in the field.
What era is this?
Pardon?
What era was this? Time period?
That was of course, when I came here in 1954.
54.
Yeah, we came down here in 54. We were very fortunate. When we came, we went to the fair, met a lot of people at the fair, got to know them, which was nice, and told them we were here. And all of the churches around still do, of course, but then it was more, it seems to be more important. They had all these church suppers. So we went to all the church suppers and got to meet people too. And, but it was very good. And of course, Buddy Myers introduced us, and and each farmer where I would go, they would tell different people I was there. And
So living on the H&H farm in the house, it was not the main farmhouse. It was obviously some other quarters at some point in time before you moved there. It was used for farmhands, maybe? Do you have any idea what the previous use of the house was?
Yeah, we may have been, we may be been the first one to move into it when Judge Vander left. Or I don't know who else, but there were other farms where they had farm hands, other houses where they had farm hands there on the Double H Ranch and Double H Farms. And so it worked out really well, and my wife, of course, handled the phone and the books and so forth. In the meantime, we were having children too. But another thing helped me get busy. Curtis Candy Company started a business of artificial breeding. Now, they had artificial breeding down here, but the Curtis Candy Company had some of the best bulls in the world. So that gave me another out. I would go around and say, you know, if you have some prize cows or whatever, why don't you try using some of these bulls? And that worked out well. It was competition kind of with the Maryland horse cattle breeding, artificial breeding industry, but it really got me around the farms because especially people like the Jaegers called me early on because they needed service right away, and fortunately I was able to go right away when they called. I was ready, and night or day. And
do you remember in those days? Now this is still at H&H. You stayed at H&H at that house for quite a while. What you say?
About 8 years, I would say, 7 or 8, about 7 years. That was another thing where my guardian was always looking for me. A good friend of mine was Hap Hawkins. He and another guy had bought the farms on the corner, bought that farm on the corner of what is now 108 and 29. I've forgotten the name of the farmer, but I did his farm work too. And so he said, we're going to develop this, and I've got a lot you ought to have for your hospital. And it happened to be that farm right on the corner, or that acre, 2 acres right on that corner. So after we were down there for about 7 years, we bought that lot there from Hawkins, and then we built our hospital there. And
before we get to the hospital,
yep.
Let's go back. You moved in 54, and you were there for 7 years, and your wife was doing what then?
She was the chief cook and bottle washer. She was the answered the phone, and
so she helped with your business.
Yeah, and helped with this. She was my technician, my nurse, and handled the phone and did the books and everything.
Did she have training in that?
No, she was a teacher. She went to school and graduated in teaching, and she taught. But she liked animals. And
was she around farms growing up?
Well, she grew up in a small town in South Dakota, Armour, South Dakota. So, and then her folks moved here to Delaware in her junior year of high school, and then she went to Delaware, and I met her at the University of Delaware. So that was.
So now you're back to your H&H farmhouse, and Then you said, you decided to say, wait, we can even get some more help, honey, if we have kids.
Yeah, hey, good.
So you had what?
How many children?
Yeah.
We have 10 children altogether. Finally went to 10 children. That's 7 boys and 3 girls.
Kidding with me. Is he kidding with me?
10 children.
Yeah, 10 children.
Picking up his
And
Cross your heart?
yeah, cross my heart. Hope to die. Yeah.
microphone pick up for you. Okay.
Yeah. And the two.
Congratulations.
And thank you. Yep.
Were they all about 1 year apart?
2. We were very fortunate. We used the rhythm method. That's, if you use that, you can guaranteed you can maybe at least go at least every other year. So, but that's what they call people that use the rhythm method. They call them parents. So,
So that's pretty. That in itself means that she became a full-time mom.
she did, and
How did you manage with 10 kids? Just roughly give me an idea. You're going off because you couldn't bring the cows, the steers, the pigs, the hogs, and the horses home with you. So you went out every day.
every day, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then she was raising kids.
She was raising kids and all, but I will say after we had, we had one in college. Then the first one was born the first year after I got out of college. Second one at Williamsport, Pennsylvania. We got down here, and then the third one was born while we were there, and the fourth. We had 4 children in the farmhouse, and by the time we got to the third one, she said, "I'm going to need some help." So we got a lady to come and work in the house, and she was very, very good. So that was a big help. Then she said, I can't keep duking the books and getting the phone here with 4 children. So then I had to hire a secretary. That was a traumatic for me because she knew the people like a book. She knew the business like a book. I didn't have to worry about a thing. Then I had to hire a secretary. So not only had to pay her, that was another thing. I had to teach her how to get along with me and the books and the running the business and the clients, how to handle the clients, how to talk to them, and how to arrange my calls. So that was a tough decision for me to have to make, to hire a secretary. But anyway, I lived with it, and that worked. And so she was with us, and she was very good, I will say that.
I'm sure the secretary allowed you to have more time to take care of the animals.
Oh yeah, and that's another thing she did. She took care of the animals. You know, she was my nurse for the animals when I'd be in the country. We had 5 cages and all in the downstairs, and she would take care of them and lead them out and tie them along the fence so they could all be out during the day and put them back in the cages. And so she was.
And that's before you went to your hospital, or?
That was before we built the hospital. Yeah, all that was downstairs. And the old dining room for Judge Vandeventer was my waiting room, and my desk was there. It was a large kitchen, so one end of the kitchen I used for my surgery and my exam room, and the other end we used for our personal kitchen. And then.
So you got to meet a lot of farmers.
Oh my goodness, it was wonderful. I got to know all these farmers well. It was very, very, just a blessing.
What did you do? How did you handle the big farm, the biggest farm? I don't know which that was, but if you can think back, what was your biggest farm? Because I'm thinking like that means you had so many animals to take care of, proportional. Because let's say you know this figure better than I, but out of the 200 head that are on that farm, 1% would get sick every month or every other month. You had some ratio that you started experiencing because you know about the traditional illnesses and the ones that they would go through often. And, so all of a sudden it's like out of the 3,000 head of cattle you're taking care of, every month you'd have 10 cows you definitely had to go take care of.
And more than that, I would do maybe anywhere from maybe average 10 to 14 calls a day or more. Yeah, It took me maybe 45 minutes per call because you could go right down the road. You know, line them up and just right down the road. So about every 45 minutes I could take a call. And and I worked long hours. I'd be on the first farm by 7:30. In fact, I'd sometime be there by 7, and I'd even have breakfast with them after we finished treating their cows, that sort of thing, so that they could. This was another thing that got me started on all the farms. When I came here, I don't understand why Maryland was maybe behind. They were behind New York and Pennsylvania, but they were not. Cows were not tested for tuberculosis or brucellosis. So the year I came here, they passed a law that the cattle had to all be tested in this state. Every cow had to be tested. So they notified us. They said, every farm you go to, and if you know about it and don't go there and talk to them, tell them they have to test their cows. Now this really put me in business. It was a lifesaver, to tell you the truth, but it really put me to work. I mean, it made long hours for me, but so I'd have to go in or when I was on a call, or he would stop in and see them, say, you have to test your cows for tuberculosis. But can you imagine how dangerous that was for me and for the people of this county? That those cows were not tested for tuberculosis in 1954. So I got to test every cow, and that's a lot of cows. Every cow in this county for tuberculosis and brucellosis.
And what year was that, 54?
And I was in 1954.
So you were probably testing what, 4,000 cows?
Oh my, I'll bet every bit of that or more. I do a herd a day, and you're talking about 20, 30 cows a day, at least. And the Jaegers had more than that. They must have had 100. I know they did. They had over 100. And
would that be considered one of your big farms?
that was one of my big farms was Jaegers. And then trying to think of my other big dairy farms. And of course I had quite a few big horse farms. I'd go to the big horse farms 2 or 3 times a week too, plus emergencies. And I'd go just a regular checkup on horses and the breeding farms. So anyway, this was a real blessing but we found a great number of cattle that had tuberculosis, and that would have been serious.
Contagious, isn't it?
Huh?
Isn't it
Very, very contagious. So, and I went to one farm particularly, and he said, "I'm not." Well, a couple of farms, as a matter of fact. He said, "I'm not testing these cows, and they're my cows, I'll tell you, I do what I please with them." And I said, "Okay, I don't make the laws, so I just tell you what they are." And they said, "Okay." So anyway, I called the state veterinarian. And I said, "I know we're supposed to report what we're doing." And I went to this farm and they refused to let me test them. He said, "Okay." He said, "Can I meet with you Monday or next week," whatever it was. And I said, "Sure." He said, "Well, because we have to go out and see him." I said, "Okay." So we went out to see the guy. And then he said, "I understand you don't want your cows tested." He said, "No, I'm not testing them." He said, "They're my cows. Do as I please with them." He said, "Well, that's okay." He said, "But now I want to tell you," he said, do you and your family drink milk? Do you like milk?" He said, "Sure, we drink milk." He said, "That's good, because you're going to have a lot of it to drink starting tomorrow if you don't get these cows tested." He said, "Because you're not shipping any more milk out of here until they're tested." He said, so he said, "Can you come tomorrow?" And I said, "Okay." But I'll never forget things like that. And it's just unbelievable the way things worked for me. And then it wasn't.
Can we move to your decision or vision to say, "I want a hospital"?
Well, now that's right. We're here working 6 or 8 years, and he said, he said, "I got this. If you're thinking about, building a hospital or anything," and not only that, Dr. Ziegler is the other doctor I was thinking about in Catonsville, Dr. Ziegler. So I had talked. When I came down here, I went to meet all of them too. I said, went to meet Dr. Ziegler, went to meet Dr. Corner in Sykesville, and Dr. Ladson. And this is an interesting thing. I went to all 3 of them, and they said, "Well, you can start over there if you want, but we take care of supposed to all these animals. I don't know, it may not be too easy. He said, we take pretty good care of all these animals down here. Dr. Ziegler, Dr. Ladson, and Dr. Corner all told me that. But then after I got started, and I told him, I said, well, this is another thing too. Dr. Ziegler went on vacation, so he sent his emergencies to me while he was gone. Dr. Corner got sick right after that, and he sent me all his emergencies while he was sick in the hospital. So they all got me interested, you know, got me to be known. And I told them, you know, if you have any emergencies you can't get to, let me know. And of course, Dr. Ziegler said, well, that's good. He said, I won't have to do any more night work. He said, I'll get them to call you. I said, great, I'll work 24 hours a day. I'm going to get, you know, I needed to work. So it really worked out that it really put me to work now. It was long hours though. I will say that. I started early in the morning and I worked till 10 o'clock at night, most every day for years. And
now this is what, before or during the hospital period?
They're both, really. I started really getting very, very busy. In fact, I was so busy, finally, about the third year, I had to hire help. So I went up to Cornell and hired a new graduate. And he was good.
So you got a vet assistant?
Yeah, got a vet assistant. Got a vet assistant.
Partner or whatever you?
No partner, assistant.
Okay.
Just hired him. And
just out of college.
Yeah. Oh, and then this is what I was going. And then I was talking to. I can't remember if. That's when we started getting this. They started saying, well, somebody. In fact, I met the guy doing it. Started buying up the farms, and he said they're going to start developing more of these farms. And Dr. Ziegler said to me, speaking, just hinting, and the good Lord looking out for me, he said, you know, Fred, you should go ahead, you should build a hospital out there. You're going to have to get a place. You can't stay at that farm forever, so you'll need to buy a farm. So, and then I got this lot, and so that's when I built the hospital, small animal hospital, and we lived above it. So we lived above the store. That was good old timies. And I just figured that would be it. So then I had to hire another vet. So then there was two vets and me and a secretary, and I had to hire a couple of technicians after that. And those techs, as soon as I built the hospital, those techs were worth their weight in gold. They were, you know, high school students, and they'd come to work for me, and they'd stay all the way through high school, all the way through college, and you know, and they were really worth their weight in gold because they were so interested, loved the animals, loved what they were doing, and they would work as receptionists, and I had a secretary. Of course, I always had a full-time secretary after that. And we lived upstairs. I had a two-way radio, so my wife could always get in touch with me, you know, all the time. I know now the kids all remember the old call signals. KGD 837 was my call numbers, and
So Don, your hospital was able to serve the biggest to the smallest?
well, really, it was a small animal hospital. That was my next thought. I might build a large animal hospital with it. I was so dang busy, I was afraid to do that. I don't know how it ever worked, you know. So, but this is what happened too. We weren't there, I would say, more than 4 or 5 years, and the state came and said, we're going to take this corner. And they did, of course. They said, we're going to take this corner, so I'll let you know it'll be soon. And then they called and made me an offer and said, this is what we're giving you. And I said, well, you know, this is a business. It's not just a building. And they said, well, that's what it's estimated for. If you don't like it, you can protest it. So we did, but we didn't get anywhere. The attorneys for the county talked to the jury, said, now, you know, we like Dr. Lewis. We'd like to help him, but this is your money we're spending, and we're looking out for your money, don't forget. So, of course, they turned it down. And so they said, well, this is what you're offered. Do you want it? And I said, I can't take that kind of money. They said, well, let me tell you, the money's down here at your courthouse. If you want it, you come get it. and then we're taking the property. And they said, well, you can stay here until we need it. Well, I stayed there for a couple of years. But then I was lucky again, right up here on 108. You know where my hospital is, the one I built. They're really nice. So I was taking care. He had half a dozen 4-H cows and so forth. And he said, yeah, we're gonna sell. The kids are outgrown. We're gonna sell this and get a smaller place. He said, if you hear of anybody who wants a nice small farm, I said, I'm needing one. So again, my guardian angel was looking out for me. So we bought that and got that zoned. It took a while.
Is that on a farm or next to a farm?
That was not where that was right on 108 there. We got 2 acres, I think it was. We got.
Okay. Did it come from part of a farm?
No, that was just a small farm, maybe 3. They had about a 3-acre farm, I guess. It was about 3 acres, yeah. Yeah.
So let me try to get some perspective here. Because in the early days, Doc, those animals were very valuable to the sustenance of farmers.
Yeah.
They're living, right?
Yeah.
So then that means that they have to be in full productive shape.
Absolutely.
So that means, from my point of view, you were responsible for that.
Yep.
Which is a pretty powerful thing when you think about it, because if they kept losing animals, for instance, tuberculosis spread through the herd, you're talking about, going belly up as a farmer almost, in the sense of potential. So you're in that situation of keeping, you're really keeping all these farms alive.
Yeah, keep them healthy. Yeah.
Not particularly the people working the farms, but the income-making animals on the farms, right?
Yeah.
So that's a pretty great contributing thing you've given.
Yeah.
And I want to acknowledge you for doing that. I think that's really valuable. So one of those problems, though, is can you just try to relate to us some of the experiences that come back on keeping some of those animals alive, and then I'll ask you one more question about that. But can you try to go into that area a little in your
Try to what?
Give me some memories of that.
Well, yeah. I tell you, I would say I would try to leave no stone unturned about anything, and if I had a sick cow, I didn't let the sun set on it. I would say that, I of course was very pleased. I was very pleased with the education I got at Cornell. I really felt very confident, and then having to use all that information that I had learned in Williamsport with this very smart doctor. I could always had a question I could answer. He could help. So when I came down here, I was well prepared, and things like the testing was so important. But then again, breeding the cows was important, and sterility. I mean, I would help set up programs for the farmers, where they would pregnancy test their cattle each year, so that if she wasn't pregnant, to breed them again. They would know she wasn't pregnant, or they would get rid of her and and raise new ones. And we would vaccinate the calves, so that they would be healthy, and all these were new, and advise them on their raising their cattle and so forth. It was, yes, as you say, it was extremely important, and I really felt I had a lot to offer, and I think I did. And we treat them, and I enjoyed surgery too, large animal and small. Calving was a big thing in those days, and I had all the equipment to deliver calves was good. And if I had to do a cesarean, I could do it right then and there. And another thing we had in those early days, which pretty much eliminated it now. Of course, we don't have that many dairy cattle now, but they had fences where they would have a lot of nails and so forth, and they'd drop nails or hammered in, and they would skitter off. And the cattle, when they eat, they don't chew much the first time around, so they would eat the nail too. And they had a condition called hardware, where the nail would puncture them. So what I would do, it's basically give them a magnet, would help pull that nail out. Now, if it didn't right away, then I would operate and go in and take it out. So I could do that fairly rapidly, and I'd have them helping on each side, and holding it open, you know, and then sew it all up. So that was a big thing. That, and another surgery that I did was, which I learned I didn't have to do surgery. Eventually, they started feeding cattle pretty high powered then at the time, and the cattle weren't really prepared for that, and they would get a twisted stomach. The cow has the 4 compartments of the stomach. The 4th one would swing around from the right to the left, and then so early on we've learned how to find it, and then operate and pull it around and suture to the side of the body. Well, we learned that if we laid the cow down and rolled her over, it would roll by itself, and then we'd sew it there right from the outside, so we didn't have to operate. So that was a big thing then that I did it was a fair amount of. But milk fever was big. My first case that I took down here was a milk fever. That was, like I was saying, on Cedar Lane over there. And that was something you come right away, you know. They call and I come, no matter what.
What is, Doc, what is milk fever?
Milk fever is when they're calves, it's a sudden loss of calcium, and it puts them down. So we have to go give them intravenous calcium and glucose, and then there were other conditions there, where they would get the early spring grass, they would get sick and so forth. So there were things that were pretty routine that I took care of, and were life-threatening, you know. So, and the breeding was a big thing. We're getting them pregnant and checking them for pregnancy. And the beef cattle, that's something that would be very important. We'd check all these beef cows and go through rectal, like somebody was saying, with a long sleeve, and go in there and do the rectals down the line. And for the Jaegers, I used to test their cows, I think almost once a week. I would be checking, you know, half a dozen or so of their cows for pregnancy, and of course I had to test them every year for the tuberculosis and the blood test for the brucellosis. So
Doc, just tell me, this is a philosophical thing. You have all the knowledge of all the illnesses and all the treatment, but there is this thing about, I don't want to call it preliminary, you know, what do I want to call it? The word preventiveness in health of the animals. Would you educate the farmers to a preventiveness attitude, or can you explain how your philosophy in that?
Yeah. Oh yes, I do. Now the farmers here, very astute to start with, but of course they were all most of them were the small farmers. They weren't all had big farms like Jaegers. Most of my clients had maybe 30 cattle, 30 head, and of course, but they all had milking machines, of course, and the big dairy farms like the Jaegers were pretty progressive. Now, things like that. One thing I would explain to them on their calves, they had their calves on one side of the barn next to where they milked the cows, and then it'd be warm all during the night. When they turned the cows out in the daytime, it would get cold. The calves would all get pneumonia. So I had to explain to them, they can't do that. Those calves can take the cold, but they can't take the change. So that's when they started having those little calf hutches, you know. And in the case of the Jaegers too, they opened the outsides and closed the insides so that it was just the opposite of what they thought they needed at first. They thought they needed the calves to be warm. And they changed that and blocked that off so that the calves stayed at constant temperature. So things like that, and I always advised them all on vaccinations, and we did that, and dehorning. We dehorned the calves and not let them get to be cows. And I dehorned a lot of cows too, because they had not done them when they were calves, and of course they're so dangerous to themselves and to each other. So we dehorned the cattle. And I would explain to them, just do it when they're calves, and it doesn't amount to that much. So that's important. And explain to them, that they need supplements, they need it, they need the salt block always, and so this was something that I was always on the watch for, to make sure they were doing things that they should know. And as I say, they were pretty astute down here, the bigger farms, and the smaller farms. While we worked with them, explained to them and told them what they needed to do. It was very very satisfying, and the farmers were all great down here, really great, and very receptive, and they were good to talk to and work with.
Under what condition would you say an animal was too severe to be saved?
Too severe to be saved? Well, it would almost have to be old age. I tell you, we saved most all of them that were. We would mostly save them. There would be infection. We'd use the antibiotics, and that was a fortunate thing too. We had penicillin. We had antibiotics to use, and
if they broke a leg, you could patch it up.
And if that's another. They depend on the break, and cattle are so big, and horses too, that it's very difficult to get them to not injure it again. But sometimes they would dislocate something, and then we could put that back. But yeah, if it was a fractured, that was a danger. A fractured hip, they would fall, for example, and sometimes they could get around even with a fractured hip, but that was not real good. But yeah, a broken leg, we would have to put them down. Yeah. Calves, sometimes we'd set a leg and put a splint on it, and like I say, a dislocation, like a ankle or something, we put that back in, put the cast for a while, and they would come along.
How was a big animal like a horse or a cow that was going to be put down disposed of?
How they what? Disposed of? Well, used to have Carol Braun, and he would take them, and then after he closed up, they pick them up. There are two companies around here that pick them up and take them. And the one company, I don't know what they do, and I guess Carol Braun used to skin them and save the hides and save the fats and grind the meat for bone, or the meat for dog food, and grind the bones for calcium, and for so he would do that. And I have people that pick them up now up the country. When I put one down, and they'll compost them. They compost them, so they don't bury them, but they compost them. Now, some people bury them on the farm, especially if it's a pet. If it's a pet, they want to keep them, and they'll have them.
The way it was in '54?
Yep, same thing then. Every once in a while, some people would bury them, especially horses. Now cattle. It's the more they would, a lot of them would bury them, but mostly they'll get them picked up. But yeah.
So a lot has changed since 1954 when you came here to the H&H, and now in the life of the veterinarian doc.
Uh-huh.
Can you give us a perspective on that?
Well, now this is very interesting too. Of course, they developed a lot. They got rid of almost all the dairy farms now, and we just have a few. And I used to have big horse breeding farms too, and I'd go there 2 or 3 times a week, like Goldsmiths and the Edgar's over here that is now in the middle of Columbia. I used to go there, and Alan Clark and the Pollingers. I still go there. But here's the thing. As Columbia was here and all around, what would happen is these developers they'd buy a farm, and that would lose all the cows, but they would hack it up in 5-acre plots or so forth, and all of them would have a horse or two. So at the time, my horse practice really as I was losing the cows, the horses really went up. So, and so many cows. And we have the Columbia Horse Center, which I've taken care of for years, and various horse centers where they have the lessons and so forth. So we take care of them. And it's the same thing there. We get the vaccination schedules, which that keeps me pretty busy yet today. But I got to the point now where I try to not take any new clients because I don't really want to work all day like that, like I have been in the past. So if I go out for 3 or 4 hours, that's fine. Then I have mornings at home and evenings at home now, and so. But I had a lot of long hours over the years, which I really enjoyed doing, and my wife put up with it. And
So did any of your kids become farmers?
well, now this is very interesting. My 2 oldest sons both became veterinarians. And a lot of people said, Lloyd, you see how long your dad works all day and he's out in the country, what in the world made you guys want to be veterinarians? And they said, well, I didn't know there was anything else to do. So they worked with me too. Always my kids worked in the office. As they grew up, they all worked in the office starting like this. And as little kids, they rode with me in the country. And when they were 16, in the summer, that was their job, was to drive for me and be my tech always. So every one of them did that every summer after they were 16 till they went on off to school. And so, yeah, so they all went on, and this is interesting. The 2 oldest became veterinarians. Then the third one was a girl, and she went into psychiatry. She kind of liked the medical aspect and all that stuff, and I guess she wanted to figure out what people are thinking. And the fourth one started out, I thought he might be a veterinarian or a doctor, and he didn't care for that. And he decided that he liked working with people. So he went into law, and now he's vice president of Johns Hopkins University and the hospital. Both he's their legal expert. So that was him. And then down the line, the next one was in business. I guess they liked the business aspect of it and so forth. And so the next 2 were business, and my next daughter went into business. So, yeah, they all got into business right there in the middle.
Do they have any hobby farms? Do they do any farming on the side?
Yes, the oldest has a big farm. He went to school in Italy, so he got to like those Italian cows, and he raises those big, fancy beef cattle on his. So he has a farm and he raises them.
Around here?
Pardon?
Around here?
He's in northeast of Baltimore, Cecil County, I guess it is over there. It's this very nice area, lots of horses and so forth, and he has a couple of thoroughbreds as well as his cattle farm. So he loves these cattle and his dogs, and he's still practicing too. So well, he's younger than I am, of course. And my second son Jim he lives on a big horse farm, and he plays polo and he runs that.
Where is that?
It's over in Poolesville.
Okay.
Yeah, so he lives there, and my next son, he plays polo as well. So they all ride, and we've all had horses over the years, and fox hunt and all that stuff. And I was an officer of the hunt club for years, and whipper in and all that. So I enjoyed that a lot.
Here?
Yeah, right here in Howard County. I did the fox hunting. Mm-hmm. So.
When was that again?
Pardon?
What period was that in your life?
Well, let's see now. This is very interesting too. I doctored a horse for a guy. Well, I've always ridden over my life, and I did little fox hunting over in Delaware. They're just small thing, not a big recognized hunt, but a guy that owned a lot of foxhounds and hunted. But when I came over here, I doctored a horse for at the hunt club, and he became a client. And he said, "Well, gee, how would you like to join the club?" He said, "You ride?" I said, "Sure." So that was neat, and that started when I was still at the farmhouse, so really early. And he said, well, I've got an extra horse. Don't have time to keep him fit. So if you want to ride him, you can ride him. So that was a big help too. So I hunted the horse. So every Wednesday afternoon, I would hunt from about, I don't know, 58 or somewhere along in there, 57. From then on, for about the next 30 years, I hunted. And I was whipper-in up there eventually, and vice president of the club. And I was on the board of directors over there for 20 years, I guess. Really enjoyed it.
Where is this again?
At the Howard County. It was right here in Glen Elk. Now they're right up here, just at the northwest corner of Howard County. They're still very active, which is nice.
So picture this with me. Doc, you're, do you go to the Howard County Fair?
I never missed the Howard County Fair. That was great. Got to meet a lot of people up there over the years. And
so you're walking along through the fair, and a young guy comes up to you, and he says, aren't you Doc Fred? And you say, of course. He says, Doc, I've been thinking about being a veterinarian. Now, Doc Fred, what would you tell him?
Well, I tell him, follow your love, because there's always room at the top. So, and this is very interesting. Next week, I have to go to community college and speak to their group of pre-vet students and tell them what I think of it too. And I will say this, that when I went to school, there weren't too many veterinary schools, and kind of a dearth of veterinarians for several years there, and that's why I was so busy. It just kept me really busy. Of course, I like that, but now it's going to be tougher. There's room, and as I say, there's always room at the top. And if you find that practice is not going to work, there's plenty of things you can do with that education. So yeah, I tell them, don't let anybody talk about their dream, what they like to do, and I'm certainly blessed that I was able to do it. I tell them it's a good thing I was a veterinarian. I don't know anything else. So, but I'm accurate business. I had the good fortune to be asked to be on the board of the Commercial and Farmers Bank there while I was practicing, and I served there for 40 some years on the board, and I was the chairman of the board for 9 years. That was a nice diversion from just talking medicine and illnesses and that. That was another blessing. It was good for me, and I got to meet a lot of people. And with my business, it's been wonderful to meet people, and that's a big thing with my family, I guess, is we're people. So, but yes, I definitely, people do that a lot of times. I want to be a veterinarian. I said, well, don't let anybody talk you out of it. If that's what you want to do it. Go for it. Doors will open, if you're doing the things you'd like, doors will open. And I tell them, one thing about it, if you're doing what you like, it's not work. I've never done it. I've never worked in my life. It's been just enjoyable. Never worked a day in my life.
Do you have any pets at home?
Pets like a dog, 2 cats, and 7 horses. 8. Well, I have more than 7. Lord, I have 10 horses. Yeah, 10 horses. Yes, and I do. And I go down there, and people say, "Why do you get up there and feed those horses every day?" And I said, well, if I can't go down there and take care of them, I'll get rid of them. I'm with them all the time. They know me, but when they see me come, they come running. And if I'm out there fixing the fence, they're in the way. They got to help me.
Are you on any board of directors currently?
I'm not currently on any boards that I'm trying to think. In fact, I tell you, I was just asked yesterday to serve on the Howard County the Horse Breeders Association. The Maryland Horse Breeders Association. So that's interesting that you mentioned that. And I got too old. I had to retire from the bank board, unfortunately. I was on the YMCA board to start it, and I was on that for a great number of years. And we got it going, and I was so busy I didn't stay on it after about 10, 15 years, though. You know, I figure we got it going good. I'm a very, very backer of the YMCA. I think it's just great for kids that just don't have, everybody has to belong to something, you know. And kids that don't have anything to belong to, it's great. If they don't belong to something like the YMCA, they'll get another gang and do something else. And I think there's a problem in Baltimore. They've got to do more of that.
Even the commercial and farmers bank doesn't exist anymore.
No, isn't that something? They got bought out. But that was a big thing for me. I had a lot of stock in it at the time because I was a board member so long. And of course, when they bought it out, they paid about 3 for 1 there, and it kind of made me a bigger holder over in the bank than it bought it. But that was it. I served on that board for maybe 2, 3 years, and when I got to be 70, I had to retire. I hated it too. Shucks.
Wow.
Yes.
What a great life to learn about.
Yeah, thank you. It's been wonderful, and it's been such a wonderful county. And when we first came into Ellicott City, it was just such a beautiful little town. I mean, 5 and 10 on the right, and the barber shop on the left there, and a hardware store, and
Funeral home.
Funeral home. Yes, right up the street. It was, and a theater on the corner, gas station up at the street here. Pig and Whistle up on Route 40 there. You remember Pig and Whistle? Yes. It was just, and all these gorgeous farms. So it's just been a wonderful, wonderful life.
I thank you so much for sharing with us.
Well, it's been my pleasure, I tell you.
Very good.